I was wrong about the Fujifilm 18mm f1.4. I can't believe I almost traded it in. In this video, I'm going to go through my backstory of why I got this lens and tell you a bit about the sort of story along the way and what I think about it now. Let's get into it. So the history behind why I got this lens started when I was watching videos on YouTube about street photography, and it all looks really cool and it's very sort of in at the moment and quite a cool thing to be doing. And lots of those photographers seem to be using the 28mm focal length, which the 18mm on this APS-C camera equates to. So cameras like the Leica Q and the Ricoh GR and even the X100, Fujifilm X100 with the 28mm adapter on, and all seem to be ideally suited for this style of photography and yield some amazing results. So that was very sort of inspiring from my point of view. I didn't have a prime lens at that sort of focal length at that time. Also, I was I was listening to the podcast, the Fujicast with Neil James and Kevin Mullins, and they talk about photography. It's a really good podcast, worth having a listen to. And they are quite into wedding photography, and Kevin in particular really likes the 18mm when he was doing his wedding photography, as he felt you could get into the action. And that was something that I was inspired to do. I thought I could investigate doing wedding photography, and with all of that inspiration from YouTube and all these cool amazing photographers using the 28mm equivalent focal length, I thought I've got to get into this. So that's why I ended up purchasing the 18mm lens. So the lens itself is a really nice looking lens. It's all metal construction and has the classic Fujifilm aperture ring, which could be a bit more resistant, I think. Sometimes I've knocked it and changed the aperture without meaning to. The thing's weather sealed and weighs 370 grams, which makes it feel solid but not heavy or bulky, and there's no problem ever sort of carrying this thing around. So that's quite good. So as far as the build quality and aesthetics of the actual lens, I mean, it's brilliant. So I got the lens about 2 years ago, and shortly after I got it, we went on a trip to Italy to a place called San Gimignano, which is an amazing place if you ever get to go. One of those places that has so many photo opportunities, you don't really know where to point your camera, but it's got all these towers and it's just a really cool place to go. And I used it there and was very pleased with the results. And also from that point onwards, I did manage to do a few weddings, and I had a pair of XT5s, one with the 18mm on and one with the 33mm or 56mm lens on, and found that really good pair of different focal lengths to use, and it proved very successful. But along the way, for some reason, I didn't get wowed by the pictures from the 18mm, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know whether it's to do with the fact that I'm very familiar with that focal length, because it's quite close to how a sort of standard lens on a phone takes a picture. I'm not quite sure, or it might have been to do with the fact that the longer focal lengths like the 33mm f1.4 can give you even more sort of creamy bokeh, and it's a bit more of a sort of glory type picture with the longer lenses. So from my point of view, the 18mm seemed to be a bit sort of bland. And as time went on, I decided that wedding photography wasn't really for me. And although I do like going out and shooting in towns and things, I wouldn't really call myself a street photographer as such. And the things like the wider 10-24 appeal more in landscape photography that I tend to do more of. So gradually this 18mm started just quietly staying in my camera bag more and more. And I got to the point where I started to think, well, is this really worth having? I mean, it's not a massively cheap lens, so would it be better for me to trade it in and get something more versatile? it's strange that I didn't really connect with the lens at that stage, and it was something that was just very functional, and there wasn't a sort of emotional connection with the lens. And I find myself going through phases where I concentrate on different specific areas of my photography. So at that time I was also looking at, I'd done quite a few jobs for clients where I go out into towns and take area shots for housing developers, and at those times the X-T5 is great for that actually, because it's quite a low profile, lightweight camera, and you don't really draw attention to yourself. And the thought was maybe I should trade this in for the 16-55 f2.8 lens, especially as there's this new lighter one coming out that's almost out in the UK. I still think they haven't got stock of it, unfortunately. But yeah, that sort of struck me that might be a good replacement for this. But then when I started my YouTube channel, there was very much a process of looking at the kit that I had to see whether I could review it and talk about it. And when I started looking at this lens and looking back at the pictures it had taken, or I'd taken with it, I realised that it's actually an amazing lens, and there were lots of aspects to it. Well, not lots of it. There were aspects to it that I hadn't really given it credit for, and that I'd sort of passed over it, as I said, you know, for the more, or the 33s got more bokeh and all of that sort of thing. So I definitely started looking closer at this and being more impressed with the results I've had, and also taking it out more and more on shoots that I'm doing at this time. And it's really starting to sort of gel with me, and then that's when I sort of realised that I was sort of wrong about it, and I'd be crazy to trade it in. Thinking about the 16-55 f2.8, I know that's a great lens, but having the 1.4 aperture on here does really enable you to go into much lower light situations. And also it's amazing how you can actually get some really nice shallow depth of field with this, which I will show you some pictures in a minute. And it really does do that probably a lot better than a 2.8 lens, which is, you'd be a bit more challenged to do that at this sort of focal length. And on the sort of subject of the do-it-all lens, I think, like many of you, I guess I get sort of obsessed with trying to get kit for every single opportunity or scenario that I'm faced with. You know, you often see people carrying massive camera bags around with shed loads of lenses in. And I think there is a sort of beautiful simplicity about just taking one lens or a couple of lenses and trying to find, you know, to utilize them to the best of their ability, and not having to just reach for a different one. And it's quite a liberating thing, not having all those decisions to be made. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And also with lots of cameras like the X-T5 that have a really high megapixel count, if you're just putting your pictures on social media or just printing them relatively smally, is that a thing? Relatively small, then, you know, it's perfectly fine to crop into the image and throw away a few megapixels and not even notice it. And I think, you know, with that sort of concept in mind, it really frees you up to go out and with confidence, knowing that you can sort of cover quite a few bases with just a prime lens. So I think that's really cool. So yeah, getting back to the 18mm in particular, I'll jump into the computer and we'll go through some of the images that I've found that I like, and talk to you about what I feel are the strengths of this lens and how it renders stuff. So here we have a selection of images that I wanted to go through with you, taken on the 18mm. And first off, this is I love these textures of trees, as you've probably seen by now, but this is taken at f1.4. You can see the shallow depth of field, this tree in the foreground, but what I wanted to show you is how wonderful the detail is going back into the picture here. And this is f1.4, which is amazing. Another one where I focused on the tree right in the foreground, and again the detail of this lens is just really, really cool. And I think this is one of the things I'd sort of missed, how great a landscape lens this is. It's another sort of moody, stylized landscape that I shot in some local woods. And this is our trip to San Gimignano. It's my wife standing here in this wonderful old town with these towers in the background. But I just, wanted to show you the sort of detail and just the lovely rendering of stuff. This is the little apartment we stayed in, just this moody shot. This was shot at 1.8, and it just gives lovely images, and the sort of softness from out of focus to focus is really nice. And again, here in the town, such a lot of detail. If we zoom in quite a lot, you can see, right, going back into the picture, there's lots of stuff going on. This is a crop that I made of the original image. So f4.5, just this interesting shot of this guy down here. And also that serves as quite a good thing of how sharp it is down in the corners of this, because he's perfectly sharp, and over here is all nice and sharp. And the tree texture, this is something that I've found with this. It just looks so fluffy and real. I don't know, I can't quite describe it. It looks like I can reach in and touch the texture of this tree, which is lovely. I mean, it's probably to do with the texture of the tree as well, but the lens renders it really nicely. This is me trying to do some street photography in Florence. I was just sitting on a bench and this guy came and squatted down in front of us trying to take a picture of something else. I don't think he even noticed me. And I've added some grain and a bit of a punchy black and white edit to this. So just wanted to, show you the street options. This is one of my ICM shots where I was rotating the camera and get this wonderful sort of softness, but also when we go in, there's plenty of detail there So I opened the shutter, paused, and then rotated it so you get a sort of print of the image and then the blur lines as it goes round. So yeah, it works well for that. Another scene. It's all very lovely and nice colours and super detail again all around the image. Even down here, right in the edges, really nice. So this sort of specifications of all of this was something that I seemingly overlooked, and now I've actually assessed them again. I'm keen to go out and shoot with this lens because it just produces such amazing images. Again, here's a wonderful textural thing of branches, and going into here, the sort of detail is just really nice. Even down here in the corners, all very cool. We went to stay in this sort of yurt thing that was made out of an old silo, a grain silo, and this was the ceiling of the yurt. But I just wanted to show you down here in the corners again how beautifully detailed the images are. That was the yurt thing, well, the silo. And again here I wanted to show, I know these are quite close, these mugs, but the fall off into bokeh and out of focus regions is really nice, even closer. And my grandson, who was looking at some rabbits, I think, at a farm, but it's just lovely the way it all melts away. So that was at 1.4 on the 18mm. This one was just another one to show you something in a more urban landscape, but again, beautiful crispness and detail. Even up here in the aerials and everything, so pretty cool. And another nice morning shot. It was misty and the sun was blasting through, so I just thought that was a lovely shot. It's my wife looking out over some views, but I think it's a great lens for doing a environmental portrait, so setting somebody in a scene. I mean, this is shot at f2.5, so the background does sort of disappear away, and you could obviously use a narrower aperture if you wanted everything in focus, but I thought that was nice. And again, I think same place but different day. The amazing colour, this blue colour on the water was really cool, but just again, very beautiful detail and very pleased with that. And then these last two are my favourites, and I really love the way that this lens, and probably the camera, render the softness of the pine needles and everything, yet sort of keeping the sense of all the detail and all the trees and everything going back into the picture. And this last picture, I really love this. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know whether it's the best photograph of all time. It just has a lovely atmosphere and really summed up what it felt to be there, to me anyway, in this scene. And the way that all of these branches and everything are rendered, I just find really, really wonderful. And so, yeah, I've been so pleased that I've refound this lens. And if you can get a copy to have a demo with, if you haven't got one, I think it's really worth having a go with it. And if you've got one that don't use it, it might be worth taking out and using it on landscapes if you haven't done at this time, because it sort of renders them really lovely. And that's my summary, is that it's actually a really lovely lens, and I feel sort of a bit crazy that I overlooked it initially. So thanks so much for watching the video, and I hope you found it interesting and informative, or helped you make a decision about this sort of focal length lens, or the 18mm f1.4 in particular. And if you can click the like and subscribe, I'd be very grateful, and hopefully I can see you here in the next one.